it's been an interesting 2026, but like yeah, I don't know what to say about like what the year has started out to be, and like the kind of like storm that we've had to endure as as a country, as a community. But I know most people are gonna say what they want to say. Most people gonna smoke what they want to smoke, and truth be told, others they don't care about no other things.
Okay, boomer.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is we go to Ukraine and we travel all the way to Uganda, but we take the long way around. This podcast is indeed called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I'm the only. I'm the one who over the weekend discovered that one of his culinary dreams is to eat a whole entire fish. Not talk about the whale of a cod sandwich from Eaton Park, like an actual fish that you take out of the ocean. Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, I probably wouldn't mind trying that, just maybe put the eyes on the side of the fish, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you wondering what it is that we do here on Hey, Listen to This, well, it's pretty much right in the title. We listen to this, and those thises are music albums. Every week, me and Ryan come together to talk about an album of our choice, and we discuss what we like, what we don't like, and pick the tracks that we like, and talk about some of the lyrics that stand out, some of the musical performances that stand out, note for note, line for line, and at the end of every episode, we give the album a rating out of 10, and then we decide to recommend an album based off of our album that we just talked about, and then we pick the next album for the next episode, and thus continues the circle of life here on Hey, Listen to This.
That being said, Matthew, but what for the dear listener out there who didn't catch last week's episode or just can't scroll back one of their podcasts in feed of choice, what did we cover last week on Hey, Listen to This?
So last week we started our 2026 dive into our Black History Month series, where we cover artists of African American descent and of the Black community. And last we pulled out Inner Visions, the 1973 album from Stevie Wonder. Won the Grammy for Album of the Year, spawned a couple big hit singles like Higher Ground and Living for the City. And I'll just go ahead and say I really enjoy talking about that album, because that album, to me, is quite great. I'm not going to completely spoil it for those who haven't listened to the episode. But yeah, I'm very glad we finally got to talk about Mr. Wonder and his Inner Visions track by track, and it was a good time.
And for me, it was an absolutely great time as well. Stevie Wonder is one of those artists that are definitely on our metaphorical podcast bucket list in terms of artists that we should cover in our history of being music podcasters. So yeah, we checked that one off the box, and yeah, I was very happy that we did, especially given the context of Black History Month and the impact that Stevie Wonder has had as a whole on the pop music landscape and the music landscape as a whole. And with Inner Visions, it was a perfect album for me to dive into because, like I said in the review, I knew Higher Ground, the single, prior to going into the review, through my love of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, as weird as that sentence is to say in the year of our Lord 2026. So I knew one of the tracks, and it just gave me an excellent springboard into diving into the rest of the album. But yeah, I For those of you who did listen to last week's episode and are tuning into this week's, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know that I was a little bit lower on the album compared to Matthew, but I still enjoy the album nonetheless.
And I'm glad you did, because to me that is it is a rather essential listen. But enough of spoiling last week's episode. That was last week. This is this week. And this week, Ryan, it is your turn to pick an album for us to talk about. What is it that we'll be talking about this week in our second installment of Black History Month 2026?
So, for at least coming out of my corner of, while we're in the Black History Month celebration of 2026, I decided to, pick albums that were basically Ryan Kern's not centric, but stuff that was really, really within my wheelhouse. Because the two previous reviews that we've done that were my choice were Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny. Both fun time, excellent reviews that we both did. So dear listener out there, if you're curious about what we thought about those albums, kind of scroll back a little bit. You can find those reviews if you want to. But regarding this review here, and the album that we're talking about here today. So first of all, before I actually tell the listener who can't read or look at the episode title what the actual album that we're covering here today, I owe you a slight apology because I kind of did a bait and switch incidentally, and I'll explain throughout the context of this review here, because the way that I laid out this review, this album here is oh yeah, it's just a straightforward indie rock album. Nothing's gonna get too crazy or anything like that. Little did I know, I was wrong. But anyways, dear listener out there, the album, without any further ado, that we're covering here today is the album that was released on, ironically enough, my 30th birthday, October 2nd, 2020, the year that everything changed, man. But yeah, the album is indeed Live Forever, and the artist is Bartees Strange. Now, if you are here listening to this episode, and if you are asking yourself, what is a Bartees Strange? Well, first of all, thank you. It means a lot that you're checking out a full album-length review of our episode of ours without even knowing who the artist is. Second of all, let me kind of do a little bit of a brief overview, because weirdly enough, there's not a lot on the internet, about this guy. His Wikipedia is, rather short, and under his personal life, did you actually take a peek at his Wikipedia?
I did. It was you're right, it is very brief. It is not very in-depth. It is, a lot is left to the imagination.
Yeah. One of the noteworthy things that they put under his personal life from the last time I saw was Bartees is indeed bisexual. So, and that's it. I was just oh, okay, cool. I mean, this artist could have fell under our Pride Month celebration, but given the context of the review of what we're going to be talking about in the album itself, I'm very glad that we chose to do Bartees in Black History Month. So, Bartees' real, government name is Bartees Leon Cox Jr. He was born in 1989. English-born American musician. He was born in Ipswich, England, and raised in Mustang, Oklahoma, and currently resides in Baltimore, Maryland. So, he's kind of been, all over the place, just with that context alone. But, growing up, he was born to a military father and an opera singer mother. So, as you do, when you have a military father, you are basically born into a military family. You move around, so the family moved from England to Germany to Greenland, and then bounced over to the United States, hitting up various different states before settling in Oklahoma when Bartees was 12. Now, before becoming a musician, Bartees worked as a director of communications for a non-profit environmental organization in Washington, D.C. like as a starting kind of gig. And then working through the grind in actually at one point he was actually apparently homeless, just trying to make ends meet. He actually spent time working in the Obama administration.
Oh,
He was a press secretary. Yeah. I read that in an interview today. I was just like, that's pretty cool, man. So he was a press secretary at the FCC working on net neutrality. Remember, back in the days when, we were just worried about the World Wide Web and keeping it neutral? Simpler times, man. Simpler times.
So much simpler.
But, yeah, even though for him, honestly, this was his dream job. Deep down, he absolutely hated it, and he actually hated himself for taking the job and just where he was in life, because deep down he knew what he wanted to do, and all he wanted to do was play music. But, and this is going to be a concept that we're going to be talking about in this review, specifically with one song in the album. The only thing that was holding him back, metaphorically, was the concept of genres. So, and when I talk about genres, I'm talking about the fact that Bartees is black, and he only he kind of boxed himself into oh, well, I can't play non-traditional music that's not that isn't associated with the African American community. I have to stick with rap, R&B. I can't experiment. Well, yeah. Through some soul searching, he actually decided to quit that dream job and to pursue his dream in music. And from that point, he moved to New York, and he ended up living in Brooklyn. And he was, we talk about trying to break outside of the box of genres and what society puts African Americans in. He was a member of the post-hardcore band Stay Inside, which I know one of their records. They're a pretty good band. From my recollection, it's been a while since I've listened to them, but he was a part of that group from 2016 to 2018, and then in late 2017, he took it upon himself to release his first solo effort. It's an acoustic folk EP entitled Magic Boy under the name Bartees and the Strange Fruit. So I kind of like that, kind of callback to old school music within the African American community as a whole. But it was an interesting tidbit. But moving on from there, in March of 2020, Bartees released an EP of reimagined covers of songs by everyone's favorite sad dad band, The National. And this EP was entitled Say Goodbye to Pretty Boy. And the EP was released on Brassland. So, after dropping that EP, he was named as an artist to watch by Stereogum in 2020, earlier in the year. And then later on in the year, he released his debut full-length album, Live Forever. The album that we're talking about here today. So that's a brief overview about Bartees as a whole. And typically in our shows here, man, I know that I would throw it to you to be like, hey, what's your experience with Bartees Strange? But what's your thoughts about going into this review as a whole? I'll kind of phrase it like that because I kind of know what your experience with Bartees is up until this point.
Yeah, and for those of you who didn't listen to the end of last week's Stevie Wonder episode, I did kind of spoil it by just flat out saying what I'll say now, which is I have never heard of this guy. I have never even looked into his past to be like, oh, that's the guy from that. And there is none of that. I am going to the experience with Bartees Strange completely blind and completely just, open canvas. That being said, though, the fact that this album sounds like it sounds, for reasons I'll obviously discuss more in depth as we go along, it is interesting that we're talking about an album from 2020, because for those of you who don't remember what happened in 2020, everything and nothing all at once, because that was the year of COVID, and that's the year the world shut down, and also there were protests because of the death of George Floyd, and there was an election that year. It was a lot. Maybe not as much as 2026, despite the fact that we are 10 days into February, not 10 months into February, though it feels like it. But yeah, no, 2020 was quite a time. And also, it was a year in which we started to get a lot of more DIY projects in the music scene, including one that we sort of talked about a while back. I don't think it was quite released in 2020. It might have been a year before, but whenever I think of like that DIY era and sort of the people who propelled it, I'm thinking of, for example, like a Billie Eilish, or even Taylor Swift going into her folklore ways. So, yeah, this is not completely unprecedented as far as the simple fact of DIY 2020s music that was released during the height of the vid, as the kids say. They don't actually say that. But as far as Bartees Strange himself, I have no idea what I was getting into, so I was kind of excited for it.
And I live for weeks like this where one of us doesn't know the artist that the other one's bringing to the table, like, at all. So, like, it makes for a wonderful journey, wonderful episode, in my opinion. And so, obviously, I can't really answer the question of, like, you know, what are my feelings leading up to the review, because, like, you know, as opposed to answering what is my relationship with Bartees Strange, because unlike Matt, I kind of know a little bit more about Bartees, and, like, you know, I'm a little bit more familiar with his music prior to doing this review here. So I was introduced to Bartees not through my conventional means of discovering, like, you know, underground music, in that being the Needle Drop. I actually discovered it through I discovered Bartees through a podcast called IndieCast. And they do a segment at the end. The podcast is hosted by Stephen Hyden and Ian Cohen, of, like, you know, music journalist fame. And at the end of every episode, they give an album recommendation, and it's kind of like, you know, that peeking behind the curtain. That's a little bit of an inspiration for our next album recommendations at the end of every review. So, but yeah, at one point, I do believe, I forget if it was even if it was Steven or Ian Cohen that recommended Live Forever by Bartees. But, you know, I checked it out, and yeah, I enjoyed the album thoroughly. But outside of, like, you know, Mustang and Boomer, like, you know, a couple of the big songs off the record, I never really went back to the record in terms of, like, you know, and what I mean went back to the record, I listened to, like, a handful of times since, but I never, like, you know, sunk my teeth into, like, other tracks off the record. So, yeah, and just moving on from there, like, I was excited when, you know, follow-ups would come up. Like, you know, I was a fan of his next album, Farm to Table, and then, like, his album that was released, I think, let me just spot check myself, the album's called Horror, and it was released in actually last year. So yeah, I did enjoy that album as a whole. I never really revisited that album, and I think I'm due for a respin of it. But yeah, needless to say, Bartees is, like, you know, an artist that I knew I fell in love with a couple of the songs off of his debut record. But outside of that, after listening to, like, you know, his following works, like, I enjoyed it, and I knew that he was an impactful artist, but I never really took the moment to, like, you know, listen to, like, a whole record of his and, like, you know, really sit with it. So I figured that with it being Black History Month in the year of our Lord 2026, And for me, looking to dive into records that are more within my wheelhouse, this is an excellent time, man.
So yeah, I am very excited that you were able to pull this out. It's always nice whenever we get those reviews where something has been sitting in the metaphorical freezer for a while, and you're just like, you know what? Let's pull that puppy out and see if it still has any juices left in the meat there. So I'm excited to get things started, and so I say we get things started. We will kick off "Live Forever" by Bartees Strange, and Ryan, the first track is yours to discuss, and that is Jealousy.
So with Jealousy here, it's very much like a proper opening track, and it's almost like an intro kind of track to Mustang as a whole, one of the big slamming tracks off the record. But I like what's going on here with Jealousy. It very much reminds me of something that a Bonnie Bear would do. You get that kind of spacey effect production, and you get the repetition of the phrase "cut out my anger," and I very much enjoyed the repetition of that phrase. And it just seems Bartees is trying to almost summon a desire for peace within his own life. And Bartees is actually on record saying that at one point he was so upset and depressed in high school that he almost attempted suicide by pills. And obviously he survived, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about this record here today. But he noted the feeling that he got, that he was glad that he was alive. So I hear tracks like this, and I hear phrases like "cut out my anger," and it really resonates with me knowing that story. So outside of that, the way that this was recorded though really was good. I enjoyed the distant bird noises that you heard, and you had those noises happening while you get these spacey chords that are just laying down the texture. And it's either done by a guitar or synth. I think it's done by a synth, but it makes for a very captivating intro to the album. And one critique I do have about Jealousy though is Bartees, he does do his best trying to switch from his low register to a falsetto, but it doesn't always land though. It's sometimes a sloppy transition. And for it being a debut record, I get it. You're just trying to land stuff, and I get what he was trying to go for. It just, for me, for somebody who has been known to be a little bit more critical on vocals in our show, I clocked that. I'm like, not quite my tempo there, Bartees. But overall though, I did enjoy what the song was bringing to the table. Lyrically, this song is fantastic. And yeah, I already talked about the desire that Bartees had within the song to just remove the hate in their hearts and to trying to turn his life around. So I kind of clocked it as a possible result of a strained relationship, but I more so after hearing about his personal struggles with depression, I kind of see that now as him battling his own demons. And I did have a lyrical highlight within Jealousy though, and that lyrical highlight is when he's talking about you'd talk of your needs and I'd listen for remnants of me. And if you want to look at it through the lens of a strained relationships, and somebody talking about, hey, I need this, and need this, and Bartees is listening for any hope, any crumbs that he can still be what this person needs. And for that, chef's kiss with lyric writing right there. But yeah, overall though, I'm gonna put Jealousy as kind of a middle of the road kind of track off the record for me. It's not a bad track. It serves its purpose as being a proper intro appetizer to what's about to come in the record here. And also, at this point in our episodes, we typically say, "Oh, hey, I have a top 3 and a bottom 3." So my gamut only runs a top 3. I don't have a bottom anything here. And Jealousy didn't land in a top 3 spot.
I figured as much. Otherwise, you would have stated that. But no, I respect that. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I have a top 3 and a bottom 1 for Live Forever. And Jealousy is one of those tracks that does not quite land in either category. Because you pretty much said it wholeheartedly. This is very much an appetizer type of track. It is an intro type of track. It establishes several themes that do come back throughout the entirety of the record. First of all, very atmospheric. I'm glad you said Bon Iver because I got a similar vibe too of just there being this. The two words I keep coming back to with a track like Jealousy are gospel and reverb. Because gospel, it has that flow of just, voices coming together to cry out in anguish in a spiritual attempt like you're talking about to find remnants of a strained relationship. That is from a spiritual side. Technical side, it is, again, drenched in reverb. And honestly, that was probably the one thing about this track I liked the least, is the fact that for as good as Bartees sang, and I didn't really quite pick up on the high register iffiness that you picked up on, I thought he sounded okay. It didn't really stand out to me as like, oh, that's amazing. But I was like, no, this guy's got a good voice. But it is buried in such sonic overdubs and reverb that it does get a little lost. Like, it's not bad, but it does get a little lost. And granted, I think that is probably part of it. Because in a track like this where you're establishing themes of sadness, themes of cloudiness, themes of, looking back on who you used to be and wanting to get rid of that, perhaps the point was to make the sound as cloudy as it felt. I think he did a good job in putting that together. But ultimately, I could not put this as a top track because, again, it was, like you said, there is a lot more meat left on this bone, and at the same time, it just sounds a little too spacey for my liking. But as far as the introduction piece, I dug Jealousy for what it was.
Totally respect that, and it's interesting that we both agree that this is like a Bon Iver kind of track here. And when we did the Sable Fable review, one of the critiques that you had off of, I think one of your least favorite tracks off the record, I could be mistaken, was like the overall effect of the production kind of drowned out, and the vocals got lost in the sauce. So I kind of clocked that comparison, and it's totally fair. Unless you're looking at a lyric sheet and realizing trying to listen into what trying to know what the person's actually saying, it does make it for a little bit of a difficult experience on the listener end. And I also, it would be, not that this would be a weird track to put in top 3, but I think we're kind of both in the better for worse. We kind of have this is a fine opening track. It's my palate is ready for what's going to be coming up here soon. So without any further ado, Matthew, you want to take away the next track here, which is Mustang?
Yes, Mustang, which, as I now know based off your introduction of Bartees Strange, is named after his hometown, or one of his hometowns I should say, of Mustang, Oklahoma. And after the spacey opening of Jealousy, now all of a sudden we're starting to cook a little bit. We're starting to get into much more of a fast-paced rock and roll type of vibe with Mustang. And immediately you get vibes that I would shift a little bit more towards an indie band like maybe Foxing or Kings of Leon, as opposed to Bon Iver, very, guitar drenched. I'll throw Manchester Orchestra in there as well, not just the cover artists we've done before. These are just indie artists. I'm familiar with their work. And the point being that you get all of this just sort of coming at you. You get the loud guitars, you get the high-end drums, and then you get Bartees singing. And before I move on into further analysis, am I correct in thinking that he is playing just about every single instrument on this album?
Let me actually take a look here. Let me fact check that. But go ahead.
Yeah, because I know there's one track and one video particularly where he is shown as playing all of the instruments, so I'm assuming that's probably the case. Also, it's 2020 and it was, recorded during COVID, so it wasn't like you can get a big old giant studio session, like Steven Stills had in the 70s. My point being that Mustang features a lot of really good instrumental performances, particularly by Bartees on guitar. The drumming sounds really good, the bass sounds really good, and the synths are all over the place, and I mean that in a good way too. It is just providing this very, hellishly orchestral, or perhaps orchestrally hellish type of vibe behind it that really is adding a level of uneasiness that's easy to swallow in a certain sense. And speaking of uneasiness that is, here to swallow, you get to the lyrics where he starts out by saying, "A man bled out this morning. I'm the antecedent. This was not the first time I fell in my arms." And already I'm just like, huh? And then you get the next lyrics, which are "the pain of being pure again, walking home at 4 a.m., hours to go before it ends." And then it feels like this element of horror is just all throughout the track. And it feels almost like, for lack of better terms, Halloween vibe. Like, this is, scary, they come out at night type of vibes. Mostly musically, but lyrically as well. And then you get to a verse such as, "To have a life you love, but know you're undeserving. Last night I got so up near, lost my job. It's nice to think that folks are near. Waking up was hard this year. But if I didn't move the way I did, then tell me how else could be." And it's just like, man, he is going through some pain. And he sings like it. He sings like he's in pain. He sings like he's confused. He sings like he is still wandering this abyss. Like, he's coming to the self-realization that something is wrong. He's coming to the realization that something is messed up. And we've talked about this on previous albums before, where if you're going through an album track by track, you get to the point where someone realizes, hey, this is the problem. This is where everything's going. Like, I'm thinking of Closer by Joy Division, where there comes this sense of reality of, things are still wrong, but now I'm starting to realize why. So yeah, this is a very solid track in regards to continuing to establish themes of, confusion and darkness. It sounds confusing and dark, and it does so in the right places. But despite it being a song that Bartees thought was worthy of a video, I do not have it in my top 3.
So, to answer one of the questions that you kind of left hanging there for me while I looked this up on Discogs, Bartees does not play every instrument on this album.
Okay.
He does play guitar and bass, but he does have a drummer. He does have, synths, keys, so there's other instrumentalists here that are at work. So to button that up there. But yeah, for me, listening to Mustang and then knowing the context of what he was going through, emotionally, mentally, when he was working for the Obama administration, he was literally living the life that he felt like he wanted. He dream job and everything, but he felt like he was undeserving. That whole lyrical section that you highlighted, where you illustrated that he was going through some feels, Fuck, man. Like, that's essentially bleeding on the page right there. So, like, spoiler alert, that's a lyrical highlight. So, like, I'm gonna get that right out of the gate. And then, I'll throw, like, some other lyrical notes here while I'm at it, since I'm talking about the lyrics. The lyrics where he's talking about, you're screaming and cursing, I'm smiling, you're killing me, which is at the end of the first verse. And that line is actually was inspired by, or like interpolates, the Antlers epilogue, and that is the closing track off their 2009 album Hospice. So yeah, kind of cool. And then the line that he shouts at the end of the chorus, well, the quote unquote chorus here in this song, "A beast from the southern coast." The line was inspired by TV on the radio's "Wolf Like Me." The line in that song specifically goes, "Wolf from the southern coast." So yeah, there you go. But yeah, outside of the lyrics though, and like inspirations for like the messaging of the song, like this song on the instrumental front is fantastic. Like, one of the things I want to highlight is the synths that you get here in Mustang. They're an absolute highlight for me. Like, whether it's like, the simple chords that you hear in that intro, in chorus, and then like, just some of the stuff that's occurring on, and like the simple stuff that's going on in the verses, like they just add such a nice, excellent texture, and I very much enjoyed that. And the drumming is really powerful and kind of complex throughout the song, and it's just a really great, solid performance. But for me, the thing that makes me want to just run through a fucking brick wall for this song is in the chorus, where it just pops off, where Bartees is singing, and is anybody really up for this one? And if I don't hold nothing back. Like, oh my god, dude, fuck me. Like, that's what drove me to Bartees as a whole, as an artist. And also, like, again, knowing what he was going through, and he's like, wanting to do music, but he's just like, I don't know if I can, because I don't want to do like, traditional black music. Like, that puts new context to that chorus there. Again, quote unquote chorus. And like, one other thing I do want to highlight about the song is like, towards the end of the track, you get that little instrumental break. I found it to be very solid, especially where you get the moment where the instrumentation kind of winds up just briefly and just punches you in the face sonically. Like, I love that. So, only other thing I gotta say about Mustang is it did land in my top 3, and after much reflection, it is my second favorite track off the whole record.
That is very respectable. Again, it didn't make my top 3, but I'd probably put it like a 4 or 5, because, again, the instrumental performances, like you said, range from strong to very, very impressive. Also, I very much appreciate you calling out that it is a quote-unquote chorus, because that is one thing I did appreciate about the track, too, is that even though it definitely had the feel of a traditional indie rock song or rock song in general, it really didn't have a chorus. It just kind of had moments where it elevated to the point where you thought there was going to be a chorus, but it's different from, like, there's no refrain, there's no lyrical punch. It's just sort of, the higher moment of the song, if you will. And also, I do appreciate the fact that he's referencing other artists in his interpolations and lyrics, because that's always a sign that a guy knows his stuff whenever he's using stuff like that. I know who TV on the Radio is. Dig me a little bit of them. That's a band I really need to get into more. Like, I know one of their songs and I like it. But aside from Golden Age, I haven't really dug at them too deeply. And then the other one, the Antlers, band I've never heard of before, so very much appreciate that too. So yeah, I respect Mustang for what it is, but it just didn't quite cut it for me. But I respect the fact that you got in your top 3 as well. So moving on, Ryan, I will let you have the floor with the next one, which is Boomer.
So with Boomer here, we get like if you just casually listen to the song, you don't pick up on the finer details of what makes this song so unique and just interesting. And I kind of noted it, with my first listen through of the record for the review, but during my detailed listens, I kind of picked up on the fact that Bartees almost switches his vocal delivery throughout the song. Like, you get the opening section, which is very much delivered in a rapping kind of style, and it's just very bouncy and everything like that. But then you get into the pre-chorus, which is more straightforward, indie rock, and then in the chorus things get more pop. So I very much enjoyed the shape-shifting vocal delivery elements that Bartees is pulling off seamlessly. And if you aren't listening for it, you won't notice it. You would just think, hey, yeah, it's just a song by Bartees Strange called Boomer. And I'm not, hopefully I am not a boomer who's getting offended by this, because if that's the case, well, whatever. But just see, along with the vocal, change up, the way that the song switches up styles from, the bouncy, the stuff that you get in the verse, and then the pre-chorus where things become more focused, and you get that punch in the chorus. Again, very much enjoyed that. And also, while I'm talking about the chorus, it is big, dude, and it hits so good. And we actually do have a chorus here, unlike in Mustang. And one thing I noted in the chorus is the guitar lines that are being played in the chorus. They sound so good, and just the way that they come across descending, it's very nice, pleasant to the ears. And also, speaking about the guitar as a whole, the guitar lines in the verse with the arpeggiated scale being used make for an excellent texture, an excellent backdrop. And yeah, also a thing I noticed in the pre-chorus, you get the guitar line that is accompanying Bartees' vocals, where things are a little bit more focused. You get da 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 da. But if you are listening in the background, you can hear a separate guitar line, just just being off by itself. And I thought that was pretty good, pretty clever. I very much enjoyed that. So switching into the lyrical content, though, I took this as a song about Bartees' history, where you can feel him just being a hustler, and but he's also battling the ups and downs of life. You get in the chorus him talk about I can't even lift my hands up. That's what we dance for, Lord. I'm going in, and right when I get all my hopes up, something explodes. Lord, I never win. Who can't relate to that feeling? But and my personal lyrical highlight, though, is when he's talking about, you can't hurt me, I've been buried alive by the devil that's in them hills. Oh my goodness. Again, very clever lyric writing, very effective, and knowing the context of what he went through in this past history, it makes me appreciate the song a hair more, but it doesn't affect my overall rankings on my top 3, because back to back we've landed in top 3 territory with me with this review, in Boomer taking the third favorite track spot on the record for me.
And for me, Boomer is an interesting track as well, because first of all, something I noticed quite a bit on this album, and Boomer is one of the bigger examples of it. We talked before about tracks that breathe and tracks that, sort of have room to build. Bartees doesn't do that. He just jumps right into tracks a lot of the time, vocal and instrumentals, just bam, right away. You could make an argument that Jealousy was that, and Boomer very much is that track too. And it sounds really good, because in the video it shows the full band that he's playing with being himself, and him just laying down all the tracks. And whether that's the case or not, now I know it may not be the case. But regardless, it all sounds very good. The drums are tight. The bass is very much thumping. It reminds me, in current prospect, of Old White Lincoln by the Gaslight Anthem just has that very chugging, very bottom-heavy type of unrelenting beat. And also you get the lyrics, like you mentioned, which are, to me, just one of those sort of, I am who I am, even though I'm not who I say I am. Like, he's talking about how, he just contradicts himself at every single turn in those opening lines. It kind of reminds me of how, if you ever seen that photo of Daniel Radcliffe in the night robe, the fuzzy slippers, and the 2 handguns, like, that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from the lyrics that Bartees is going with. And yeah, it comes across with like mixes of secure and insecure, a little bit of truthful and dishonest, very much a vibe of I know something you don't know, which is very cunning. But to me, the highlight of this track through and through is the music, because it just sounds very, very good. And it just rips. And yeah, I don't really have much more to add to that, except for the fact that, like you, I have Boomer in my top 3, and I have it at number 2.
One could say that you're more Boomer than I am. No, just kidding, man. I
was gonna say, you're older than me. Don't go there.
only by a year. Come on, dude. Come on. Anyways. But no, I'm very glad that you did enjoy the track a lot, and yeah, I was glad that this was one of your in your top 3. I was kind of quietly hoping that Mustang was gonna be the one that could pop into your top 3 as well, but I digress. I only have my slight hopes and my desires for reviews, but it is a shared effort, man, and your top 3 is your top 3 and your bottom 1 is your bottom 1. Speaking of such potential tracks that are in this record here, Matthew, are you ready to kind of switch up the flow here from what we were experiencing so far and go into something completely different, with the next track being Free Kelly Rowland featuring Armand Hammer?
So here's the thing about this track, or rather tracks, because which you're referring to, the one with Armand Hammer, the 3-minute version?
Yeah, that's the only one I was able to find on streaming. So
okay, because I that's the version I listened to first, and I'll talk about both of them. Yeah, the reason I bring this all up is because I did look up at the Wikipedia for this album in particular, Live Forever, and I noticed that there was one track entitled simply Kelly Rowland, and then underneath the deluxe edition had Free Kelly Rowland, featuring Armand Hammer. So I'll talk about the regular Kelly Rowland first, because they are in a way the same track, just one has a guest verse and it's a little extended. And here we get, like you said, Ryan, a very sharp change in the vibes of this record, because we go from gospel-esque opening to a pair of really solid back-to-back straightforward rock tracks, even though they're indie tracks that are not as conventional as like your typical hard 4/4 rock and roll like Tom Petty or Ted Nugent. But here we get more of an R&B hip-hop vibe, in which Bartees is singing about, I'm honestly not even sure what he's singing about, honestly. He just kind of has that very I'm that dude type of flow to him. And it does come across very similar to a track you might hear from like Drake or something like that, or maybe like Future, J. Cole, maybe, possibly. So, and I say this strictly from a lyrical point. Musically, it's a bit more R&B than that, where he is singing in an R&B tone. He's kind of half singing, half rapping throughout the track. And I will say the instruments do sound good on this track, and they do sound rather nice. And I did notice that Bartees is dialing it back on the vocals. to make it sound very much more like he's in tone with like modern R&B. I did struggle a little bit to determine whether that was a good thing or not, because on the one hand, his voice is good, but on the other hand, it just feels very like I've heard this before. Like I've heard this type of braggadocio type of vibe before. And then you get the free Kelly Rowland version, which is a bit more synth heavy than the regular Kelly Rowland. It's a little longer, and it features a verse by Armand, who, I gotta be honest with you, it took a little bit, but I wasn't sure, which part was Bartees and which part was Armand. So I thought his performance was solid. But for the sake of this review, I'm going to grade strictly the regular Kelly Rowland. And I'm going to come out and say that this is my least favorite track off this whole album. And it didn't dawn on me until today, listening to it, why that's the case. With about 30 seconds left or so in the song, and I'm not sure if this is on the free Kelly Rowland version, but on the regular version, you get this weird percussive note in the back, which just does this sort of offbeat, like tick, 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 tick type of thing. And once I heard that and emulsified that into my conscience, I was like, whoa, this actually sucks. Like, that is a musical moment I don't want to hear really ever again. So that moment alone, mixed with a little bit of me questioning kind of where Bartees was singing with this, altogether comes up with regular Kelly Rowland, not free Kelly Rowland, the paid subscription version, which is probably not the way I should say that. But it is my least favorite track on the album.
So I kind of hinted at the fact that, well, I don't want to say hinted, but I think I implied with the introduction of Free Kelly Rowland that this could have been your bottom track. So, but I'm glad that you had the contextual sake that the paid subscription version of it is actually your bottom track, which is interesting. But yeah, I did not listen to the paid subscription version. I had the free version that I listened to, and I don't remember hearing that percussive clap at the end, which might have been the reason why they just swapped out Kelly Rowland as a whole and swapped it in for the free Kelly Rowland. But yeah, I'm just getting into the nuts and bolts about the track as a whole. You talked about the fact that you've heard this kind of flow before. You kind of heard this kind of vibe before, and yeah, I have to. But I won't lie to you though. The delivery, the repetition of the phrase, the bar that is I don't want to say it's the motif of the song, but it's basically what I kind of gravitate towards is the thesis of the song, and that thesis goes, broke ass, but I got Versace dreams. That bar comes across quite nicely, and it just sounds very nice to the ear, man. It's very bouncy, and it's a lot of fun. And speaking about bars that Bartees does deliver in the song, I very much enjoyed the phrase, the bars, still got the Billy, still in my jeans, put that on Clapton, my cream. Those bars, dude. When I heard that, I was just like, oh, I see what you're doing there. You're doing a musical nerd reference there, Billie Jeans, Clapton, the band Cream. I very much appreciate that. What I did not appreciate, though, when we're talking about bars and everything like that, the guest verses from, and I actually according to Genius.com, the guest verses are not from Armand Hammer. It's from Elucid and Billy Woods himself. Well, Billy Woods, the rapper. So I think Armand Hammer actually had a hand in the production, the beat as a whole, not actually as in any any like verses or anything like that. But either way, the guest verses suck, dude. Like they're rough from a flow wise. Like you know me when it comes to rap and like hip hop as a whole. Like I very much like when rapping is done within the flow of the context of the beat, and I get a little bit turned off where it just seems like you're just talking on top of the beat because, meh, like that's just my take on it. But other things I did like about the track though, the production and the beat on the track is pretty solid, very vibey. And actually, if you zoom in, you get to hear like vocal samples like scrambled, a la like Kanye West from back in the day when he wasn't like a complete sociopath. But yeah, just overall though, like I very much did appreciate what was going on here. The execution is a little bit messy with the guest verses within the version that I heard, and which kind of did bring down the appreciation about the track a fair bit. So overall though, I did appreciate, hey, let's switch it up and do like a hip hop or like a hip hop song. The track is just ultimately kind of like a middle of the road kind of track for me.
And that's completely fair. I do kind of like the fact that for what I think might be the first time in the history of the Hey Listen to This, we do a little bit of a choose your own adventure type of thing on this track because we both kind of went in different directions. Like, no, actually listen to this one. But, I did remember listening to the Free Kelly Rowland version first, and I thought it was all right. A lot of things you mentioned, like I wasn't really taken away by the guest verses, but I did appreciate the flow of the track as a whole. And again, the regular version, the album version, if you will, is fine, except for that one little moment that I just could not shake, where it's just like, I understand you're using synths and trying to create this sense of uneasiness, but that was a little too far. But overall, it's not the worst track I've ever heard, and it's just, for what it is, I was like, no, I could skip this next time around. But now that I've plunged into those depths, Ryan, I throw it to you for the next track off of this album, which is In a Cab.
So we go from a hip hop track, which was a sonic pivot from the previous tracks off the album, to another sonic pivot. So with In a Cab, you get like, I don't know how to describe this, man. Like it's almost like a hybrid of freeform jazz, indie rock, and you also get like a rap blend in there. Very much appreciate Bartees taking the genre concepts as a whole and just throwing it in the blender. So diving into the song as a whole though, that beat is so crazy. I It's layered as like a cake in my imagination. Like you get a layer of horns, you get a layer of drums, you get a layer of trombones that all blend together while Bartees is delivering his vocals, and it just makes for like a very chaotic and very chaotic but chaos in a good way. And it just the track does come across pretty good. One thing I will say though, one of the things that holds back the track as a whole is I'm still mixed on Bartees' falsetto. I'll give him credit in theory. It's an effective songwriting tool, but the execution here again is still a little bit messy. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about In a Cab. The song as a whole seems to be about having a mental breakdown. And yeah, the lyrics as a whole though are pretty good, but there's not really hey, this is a lyrical highlight for me. But overall though, just due to the genre blending of the song and just the overall the overall the gusto to go for it, I'm gonna put In a Cab in the good song bucket. So it's the first entry into the good song bucket here for me.
Yeah, the word you use to describe this track, and it's a completely accurate one, is chaos. This is a very chaotic song. First of all, once again, much like he did on Boomer, he just jumps in the deep end feet first. He just does not take any second to build. He doesn't do a 3-2-1 or a 2-3-4. No, he just bam, vocals, instruments, and everything right out of the gate. And the frenzied music that you described very much matches very frenzied and all over the place lyrics. Like, I didn't pick up on a whole lot of them on the listens, but the one that I kept coming back to was, I was in love for 40 weeks. And that is a line that does not register as something stable, because 40 weeks, like, that's 8, 9 months, maybe 10. Like, it's not a very long time in the grand scheme of things. And overall, it just had this vibe. Like, it almost, this is going to be a weird comparison, I'm going to say it anyway. It's like a sad boy indie version of Lenny Kravitz's Where Are We Running? Like, it just, a lot of different things happening all at once, but in a way that is much more reflective in the music of just how chaotic and, in many ways, unfortunate that it is. And that's, again, if anything, this track does reestablish or continue to establish that feeling of dread, of confusion that we kind of got away from a little bit in Kelly Rowland, but has been throughout the album for most of the time. So yeah, In a Cab sort of pivots things back in the chaotic, frustrated indie pop rock direction. Although, like you said, Ryan, the genres are everywhere and anywhere on this track. So I do give it credit for that too.
Bartees is just like, you know what? Genres? Who needs genres, man? And like, you know, I know that I kind of like, you know, pivoted away from like, you know, what we were experiencing so far to kick off the record, but I'm trying to bring the listener back to like, you know, home base as much as you can. Like, you know, within this album here. And that being said, though, like I did appreciate your dissection about the track and just your analysis of it. Well, I just say we keep this gravy train rolling and go into the next track here, and that being Stone Meadows.
Yes, Stone Meadows. And once again, another bit of a pivot. It's not as hard of a pivot as the pivots have been in and out of the track Kelly Rowland or Free Kelly Rowland. But here you get a lot softer of an opening that harkens back to the start of the album with Jealousy. But I really did like that cold open of Bartees pretty much just singing along with a nice little synth bed underneath him. Almost felt a cappella in a sense. And the words that he's singing, you know, wouldn't it be nice if everyone had problems? If everyone turned tail when you're around? Is it mine or is it me all the time when I need to be alone? And so he's getting a lot more confessional on this track. And the way that it builds instrumentally, like it starts off with just his vocal, and then it dives into this very solid, very strong indie rock groove, where once again, the comparison I keep drawing to, because I feel like Bartees matches this band vocally, if not completely sonically, and that's Kings of Leon. Like, I can imagine this as a very Kings of Leon type of track. And not only that, but Bartees is singing his ass off on this track. He is just very much singing the best he's sung all album long. And also the vocals are produced a little bit more clear than they have been. There's still a little bit of reverb there, but the instruments aren't as layered as they were before. And I think that does this track a whole lot of good, because it is more of a straightforward observation. And then you get to that chorus of, now I see you on the run, and I see on the run, I see you on the run. the run, being a parallel to the Stone Meadow that he's referring to. And it just has this pulse. It has this pulse of, he has a vision, and in that vision, he sees what he wants to see, and now he's going to pursue it. So I thought that was very, very well received. And again, the performances on this track are just so strong musically. The instruments are really good. The drums are good. The guitar's great. And the synths are good, even though they lay back a little more. They're not as artsy and as layered as they were. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I know what I like, and I like this track quite a lot. It's my favorite track on the whole record.
I can dig that, man. That kind of took me by surprise, full-heartedly. But I'll just get into my thoughts and feelings about the track as a whole. It's interesting that you kind of compared this track to being like a Kings of Leon approach, because after further reflection, I kind of agree with you a little bit. But diving into the nuts and bolts about it, though, I agree. The way that it starts out is very nice. The haunting lyrics that you illustrated of, wouldn't it be nice if everyone had problems, if everyone turned tail when you're around? The way that that's coming out, and the way that Bartees just goes through just his mental breakdown process, very good, very effective, very much like that, very much like what's being brought to the table. And then after that opening stanza sung, you get the shift into that main groove of the song. And the way that shift is pulled off, dude, it's so good. And one thing you can tell about the track that I do like as a whole is after you hear On Almeida Until We Lost, after that, you hear a woo in the background from Bartees. It might not even be from Bartees, but it just seems like someone's just really just vibing and just really appreciating what's being brought to the table. And I clock that, and I'm like, I see you, unidentified musician, and I respect your enthusiasm. I respect your woo. You can be a woo girl or a woo guy. I don't discriminate. But just the way that you get moments in the song, you illustrated that in the tail end of the track, you get the I see you on the run, I see you on the run as being the chorus. I would argue that there's no chorus here in the track. You get moments where they feel like a chorus but aren't a chorus, but they are very big and very awesome, and very I like the building of emotion and feeling what you get in the track. Instrumentally, though, I'm gonna give a shout out to the drumming here. It basically keeps the song grooving so effectively, and I did very much appreciate what the bass was doing as well. And also the synths and guitars are doing a lot of sonic painting within the song, and it just creates such a fantastic song. You talked about the song feels about having a mental breakdown, but for me, the way that it just evolves is so good. And it did have a lyrical highlight within the track, in that being, if I died, I don't think they'd ever find me at all. I'd sit in the same place starving. I hope they never see me fall. And one aspect you could take that lyric as especially starting out, is hey, dying at the set, in a place that no one's ever gonna find you. But you also get that kind of twinge of defiance with the bar. I hope they never see me fall. Again, I like that mixture of emotions and messaging there. So very effective by Bartees. All that to be said, Stone Meadows did not land in my top 3. I did give it a lot of kudos and a lot of flowers and everything like that. And I actually think up until today it was in contention for a top spot song. But there's a track coming up here in a little bit that just blew my pants wide off, and I just had to crown that the king of the castle. But when we get to that king, we shall. But yeah, again, I'm marking Still Meadows as being a cut track off the record, man.
So, good contender for the good song bucket is what you're saying?
No, elevated from the good song bucket. So when I mean cut track, like, I have my top three, and then I have the tracks that just barely, like, I just cut out of the top three. Good song bucket, and then mid.
Fair. Yeah, no, I really, really like this track, and I think too. You talk about the lyrics where he's, realizing that if everything were to go away, that's how they'd want to find him. Like, that is a confidence in dealing with death that you so seldom get in songwriting. And that alone helps add to the clarity. I guess that's the one word I take away from the song is clarity. Because there is a feeling of clarity, not just in the production, but in the vocals and in the lyrics, where even though the battle isn't over in whatever Bartees is dealing with, there is a clarity that there is a direction now. And it sounds so good musically that it just fits together so well.
That being said, Matthew, I'm glad that we're in agreement that Still Meadows is indeed a great track. But before we progress into the back half of this review and find out what it does mean to actually, live forever, I have a question for you.
And what is that question, good sir?
If the dear listener out there is really just enjoying what we're bringing to the table, highlighting Bartees Strange and his album Live Forever, and they want to help support what we do on a week in, week out basis, so in the podcasting sphere, we can indeed to live forever. What are some ways that the dear listener out there can show support for what we do and help connect with us on other platforms?
So, the easiest and best way they could continue to support us here on Hey Listen to This is by continuing to listen to this here on Hey Listen to This. And the way they can do that, if they're not doing it already, is by finding us on their favorite podcasting platform of choice, whether it be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket Cast. Those are some of the places you could find us. You can pretty much find us wherever any podcasts are to be found. And also, one of those places is YouTube. If you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, that is where we upload our episodes every week. So if you'd like to use YouTube for your podcast, that is a place you could find us there as well. And if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're doing, and you like what we're doing, because we can only assume what you're doing aside from listening to us, is that you can share this with a friend, either through text message or messenger, or perhaps if you're not sure who that friend is, if you see us cover an artist where you're like, oh, I know several people who might like that artist, but I don't want to send them all direct messages. One of them might ask me for my credit card number. Don't worry. We are on social media as well. We are on Facebook. We are on Blue Sky. We're on Instagram. We are on Threads. And if you are looking for us on those platforms, you can either just look up our name of Hey Listen to This. We have the nice little blue logo with the microphone in the middle designed by my good co-host, Mr. Kearns. Or you can look us up by the username of ttheylisten. Again, that is ttheylisten, and that is how you can find us on social media. It's also you can find us on YouTube as well. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email address that you can contact us at. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. And if you use our email, you can reach out to us directly to perhaps give us some feedback, positively or negatively, or perhaps recommend a future album for discussion, because we've done listener requests in the past, and we would be glad to do them again. So again, ttheylisten@gmail.com is where you can reach us directly. You can find us on social media at Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and you can listen to us on the likes of YouTube, Pocket Cast, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. And for those of you who've done any and all of those things up to this point in our 110 plus episode run of hey, listen to this. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, we're just a couple of guys who like to talk about music. We're not sponsored by any type of rectal cream or insurance agency or fine produce product. We're just two guys who like to talk about music. And for one guy who likes to talk about music to another, Ryan, I thank you as always for being such a great co-host, picking out some great albums and dealing with my nonsense during these ad reads each and every week, it seems.
It needs to be like a running bit that you do where you just include like another random, like, hey, are you paying attention to, like, this ad read here? If not, well, that's on you. Anyways, yeah, and the compliment goes right back to you, man. Like, I very much enjoy doing this show. And like, even just the research part behind it, like, I very much like digging into records and just listening to them and expanding my musical knowledge and sharing, like, my love of music with you. And that's the whole point of the show, and that's why we do what we do. And also, like, we do it for the listener out there who might not, I might know who Stevie Wonder is, but never listened to Intervisions, and, like, might know who Bartees Strange is, but it's been a while since they've listened to Live Forever. But yeah, it's been a blast doing the show, week in, week out. And yeah, I think we are ready to dive into the back half of this record here. And I'm going to kick the back half off here with the next track in the album, the 7th track out of 11, being Flagey God. And with Flagey God here, I know that he pronounces that differently in the actual, like, track itself, but I'm just gonna go with the way that I'm leaning into it right now, apparently. But yeah, this track here is pretty smooth. I did very much enjoy how the chorus came across. Like, the production is very spacey, and the repetition of the line, Flaggy God makes for a good time. The primary beat, though, is kind of very cold and spacey with, like, almost like a flare of instrumental. Like, at the time I was thinking Nine Inch Nails, but honestly more Joy Division, to be honest with you. I also enjoyed the vocal flares that you can hear in the background. It makes for a very rewarding listen there. And also, speaking about background action here, the synths are doing an excellent job doing, like, a wavy, like, lick. Like, it's very solid. And I also dig how essentially this song is divided into two parts, with the second part repeating the first, almost like deja vu. So, and the reason why I kind of, like, made the pun off of that, or highlighted that fact, is, like, in the chorus, Bartees is rapping, "Girl, you asked me if I get deja vu," like, like, and also the how that flows with "I do with you, like, very good, very, very awesome. And a little bit about the track as a whole, though. Flaggy God takes its name from the square in Brussels, where Strange felt like the thrill of infinite and unknown possibilities. He's quoted saying, "No one knew me there. I was super lost in my life at the time, confused about what to do next, but I felt like I was capable of anything." So yeah, it's an interesting, like, mixed emotional palette there. Lyrically, the song isn't dense, but I do enjoy how it does capture the feel of what Bartees was going for with the song. But yeah, with Flaggy God here, it's a mid-track for me. Like, I very much appreciate what was going on here, but compared to, like, the other songs off the album, like, it's not a bad track, but I just prefer the other ones.
I'm probably a little bit higher on this track than you are, for a few reasons. First of all, I thought it was a little bit more consistent, and even though it does pivot a little bit back to R&B. It does so in a very smooth way, like you said. It's funny you mentioned how the beat remind you of possibly Nine Inch Nails or Joy Division, because that's not the artist I came up with. Funny enough, the artist I came up with was Beyonce, particularly on the song Break My Soul. It feels very similar to that beat, save for the horrorcore guitar that's being popped in at various points throughout this track. And Bartees, I think, is doing a really good job vocally. His vocals are very, very smooth. They're not outstanding and they don't necessarily elevate, but that's not the point of this track. Actually, to be completely honest with you, I'm not sure what the point of this track is. But the point being, it does sound very good. I don't exactly know what a Flaggy God, or as he pronounces it, Flagey God, is. But I do know that in the chorus he asks, "You ask me if I got a day job." So it's funny now hearing about his time in the Obama administration that would be a line that he drops in a song like this, because he did have a day job and it upset him. And that's why he left that job to make an album like this. So that line hits a little bit deeper in retrospect. But yeah, overall, I thought this track was solid. I'd probably say, I'd say it's a little higher than mid. I would probably put it in a good song bucket for this album, but not necessarily a cut track. Like, this is probably around like the 6, 7, maybe 5 on a good day range of rankings top to bottom with this album.
And that's totally fair, man. With Flagey God, I like reflecting, like, the only other track I can compare to off the record in terms of like appreciation, like, would be Free Kelly Rowland, and I think I prefer Flagey God just a little bit more, mainly because, like, you know, one, you don't get those, like, you know, guest verses that just completely, like, you know, are awful, and like, two, if I do get the bug to listen to the paid subscription version of Kelly Rowland later on, I can hear what you heard and maybe just agree with you and be like, "Yep, you're right." But yeah, spoiler alert though, the Flagey God is gonna be my last mid track off the record, so it's all uphill from here, dude.
Interesting. Well, I say we move straight uphill, and I will take the next track off of this album, which is Mossblerd, which, much like Flagey God, I have no idea what that means. So I'll probably pivot over to you for that explanation in a minute or two. But musically, I can tell you that this track is a hard pivot from the smooth R&B of Flagey God to straight rap with horrorcore vibes. Like, this is just a very explosive, angry, pissed off track. What he's being pissed off at, I don't know. I'm assuming part of it's probably white people, because he does reference sort of a race relations type of thing in the verses. But he does so with a very terse and monotone vocal that is just, it's impressive and a little frightening, because it reminds me, and I know I've made a lot of comparisons on this album, and I apologize for that, but I'm just going to keep going with it anyway. It reminds me a lot of Igor by Tyler, the Creator, particularly the tracks like What's Good. There's that sort of inner voice that comes in on a track like What's Good, where there's just like this real, like, deep inner monologue that's trying to, like, crawl out of him and explain, you know, who he is. And that's kind of the vibe I got from this. Like, this is the inner monologue, the inner demon talking outwards. And the other thing about this track is that, for as intense and pissed off as it is, it's real fast. Like, this track only lasts about a minute and a half. So there's really not a whole lot of meat on the bone, and it just kind of goes in and out. But it just leaves this sort of, you know, imprint of, oh, so this is darkness personified in this track, especially in, sort of the dread that's coming from tracks like Mustang and Flagey God. To hear a track like this is just like, oh, something has snapped. And considering what's coming next, that's not necessarily a wrong argument to make. But that being said, I appreciate Mossblerd for what it was. Definitely not a top track for me. I wouldn't even consider it a cut track. Maybe on a good day, probably put it in the good song bucket. You know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to put it in the good song bucket just because it's so crazy.
Oh, man. Indeed, it is very crazy. And I'm going to pick up where you left off. So you were talking about, like, I'm not sure what he's pissed off about. Maybe it's white people. Well, Matthew, I'm just gonna be honest with you. The answer is always white people. So just so going forward, that's
like, completely fair. Completely fair. I'm not gonna argue that. That's completely fair.
But no, what? So at the beginning of this review here, when I did the overview, I talked about the fear that Bartees had about wanting to do music, but he just was held back by the metaphorical concept of genres as a whole, so that he didn't want to be boxed into a traditional music structures within the African American community. Literally the opening lyrics here in Mossblerd are: genres keep us in our boxes, keep us from our comas, keep us hopeless, keep us from our options. So again, he's just spelling it right out of the gate. Genres are just keeping people from experiencing joy. That's what he's pissed off about, and not even just musical genres as a whole holding people back. So there's a section in the middle of this track here where he's talking about his nephew and how he's watching him do nefarious things, because that's what he's been fed to by TV as this is what you do when you're a black person. He's seeing black people on TV being gangsters, being drug dealers, and he feels like he equates that to hey, this is my role within society. So yeah, he's pretty pissed off about that, and I love that messaging through and through. Lyrical highlight for me, though, that I want to shout out is when he's talking about white people in the track. Ironically enough, the lyrics are: pull up on these white folks, park slope abandoned, used to hate my body, they tried to kill my spirit. So used to hate my body probably refers to racism through and through, and they try to kill my spirit, try to hold him from realizing his full potential. So I very much appreciated that, and just the societal implications about that. And outside of the lyrics, though, the song has a distorted industrial beat. It's very freeform. So again, I can't really go into too much else. I feel like we've scraped all the meat off the bone with Mossblerd. It's a very good track with its messaging. It's very short though. And maybe catch me on a different day. This could be a 5 in terms of track rankings here, but for all contextual sake and purposes within my side of the review here, this ended up being a cut track for me. It's a very good track.
It really is a good track, and I'm kind of glad you described clarified what it is that he is upset about, because again, the idea of being pigeonholed into a certain thing, it's not just a race thing, even though it heavily stems from that in Western culture, but it's also just expectations thing. You're expected to do this because that. You're expected to be this because that. And he's basically saying, no, screw you, I'm not going to do that. And he's done a good job of that on this album so far. Maybe I'm reading a little too much into this, but the fact that he uses a straight rap track to do that is a nice little chef's kiss of irony. But I agree. I think we have plucked all the meat off the Mossblerd. And I am ready to pivot to the next track, and I'll let you take the floor with this one, Ryan. It is Far.
So, with Far, talk about like Bon Iver comparisons within this album here. Like the start of this track very much gave me the vibes of Skinny Love through and through. Like it's very much a Skinny Love inspired jam coming out. And if you're gonna rip off any song, if you're gonna be inspired by any song, Skinny Love is a good song to be inspired by. But yeah, the song does start out very beautifully, but like Bartees does get a little bit pitchy when he sings the line, "I would be at your place." Like it doesn't land in my ears. But outside of that moment, though, I want to talk about like the way that this track was recorded. Everything is just sounding so cold at first and so distant, so like empty, and yeah, it just ends up becoming so good though. It was a shout out to the producer and the just how this whole album was just mixed together. So very very good. And then you get a shift in gears with this song, and I do love how this song does shift gears around the 2-minute mark. You get those ta 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 ta, like and then you get the downbeat smacks, and that eventually just pivots into just some exploding like a full out electric jam, and I was just like, oh, okay, you have my attention fully there, Mr. Strange. I know you seem like you're very far, but you sounds like you're very near now. But so like I did much appreciate that through and through. Lyrically, you get a shift at the point where it seems like Bartees is exploding in frustration, singing bars about believing in a world that's black and gold and nobody has to know. Also, he does sing bars about wishing to go somewhere low where no one could go. So, yeah, like when you get that explosion, you get lyrics that kind of match that kind of feeling. So, very nice, very effective. I very much enjoy the performance there. Lyrical highlight for me, though, was so tell me what's your name. I'm underground and I could be your ghost. I couldn't really tell you what that bar means effectively, but like the concept of being underground and being your ghost, like not known, you don't know who I am, and I could still haunt you. Yeah, this actually might be a reflection that Bartees is having a conversation with himself about wanting to be his fully actualized self. So the fully actualized self could be this underground character, it could be this ghost. But I digress, I might be reading too far into the track. So, honestly, with Far, though, this has the potential to be a top track off the whole album if it just wasn't for the pitchiness that I found right out of the gate. So, but I will make one other note, though, before I kick it over to you. I did appreciate how Far does kind of just bleed into Fallen for You. But before we get into that track, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Matthew, tell me what your feelings on Far are.
I will tell you what my feelings on Far are. I've been doing a lot of comparisons of different artists on this track just because that's sort of my connection and understanding of, current music to past music. That's how time works, I guess. And the first artist I had was, like you, I had Bon Iver. Because I did get those gospel reverb vibes that I heard earlier on in the album. And I did look up where this was recorded. It was recorded in a barn studio. And I'm just thinking, oh yeah, that's not only 2020 coded, but that is 1000% Bon Iver coded. Like, that is up his alley. And once again, we get a hard pivot to those acoustic gospel folk vibes from the hard-hitting Mossblerd. And then you get into, like you said, those dun 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 hits, which reminded me of another band that we've talked about on this show, and that being Black Country New Road, and particularly the song Opus, where it just has those sort of wakey hits that's just telling you, hey, something's about to come, something's about to happen. And then it does happen, because like you said, it goes to that full-on electric jam, which brings to my third and final comparison of another band on this track, which is a band we've talked about, but not in a album review, but in a discography draft, that being the Black Keys. Because it goes into this really like hardcore bluesy electrified shuffle that is reminiscent of some of the stuff on Brothers, and the follow-up album as well, El Camino. So yeah, like I really dug the sound of this track. It does go all over the place with all the different styles, but I kind of dug it. Um, and again, I thought he was singing well. Again, we with the vocals on certain albums tend to have that disagreement of like, oh, this is pitchy, and I'm like, is it really? But yeah, no, I thought he did a fine performance here too, and I thought that the instruments sounded really, really good. And I do like how it closes with that acoustic outro that has that sort of ominous studio chatter before flowing right into Fallen For You. So yeah, I like what I like, and I like this track quite a bit. And we have completed my top three. Far is my third favorite track off this album.
One day we should do like a bonus episode where we just talk about like our process with vocals. I think that would be fun. You've already alluded to that, but I very much enjoy and very much respect the fact that you put Far into your top three at number three. So and I feel like overall though, unless I'm mistaken, every single top track that you've had has either been like a top track that we've shared or a cut track for me. Like, because you had So Meadows and you had Boomer and then you had Far. So like every track has been we basically been almost in alignment though. Note for note. So I very much appreciated that, man.
Yeah, we have been, and I again, even though I didn't have Mustang in my top three, I very much appreciate that track too. I would probably consider that a cut track or somewhere in the good song bucket. So yeah, I think we're sort of in that same agreement. We're just different levels of it that we disagree on. Speaking of which, potentially, I will go ahead and take the reins on the penultimate track off of Live Forever, and that is Fallen For You. And as we alluded to, it goes into this acoustic mode. And I just want to point out, too, that after Mossblerd, we have now gotten two back-to-back acoustic tracks. So whatever, quote-unquote, snapped in Bartees from point A to point B seems to be reflected in this retreat on these last two tracks. But here you get a very simple acoustic song. And by the way, assuming that's him playing it, he's very good at acoustic guitar. He sounds really, really good at acoustic guitar on this track. And it does have a very intimate feel on this track. It has this feeling of just being there and understanding that, you're just sort of in this barn. It's late at night. There might be a candle up in the top corner, and there's really not a whole lot of explanation as to what's going on, except it's just you, this man, and this guitar, which is it does have a very intimate feeling to it. And it's reflected in intimate lyrics such as, are you heavy? Are you scared? Are you holding up over there? Were you good enough? It seemed like shit ain't fair. I just wander around. Are you near? Yet I've fallen for you. I've fallen for you. Somehow I have fallen for you, just like you want me to. Which in of itself is just a very almost inverted reflection of that searching for shards of hope that we talked about earlier in the album. The one slight nitpick I do have with this track, which sort of kept it out of any top spot for me, is I thought the vocals were a little overproduced. Like, I get wanting to have that dry setting and having that indie folk vibe. I know we've talked about Bon Iver a lot, and I think that's what he was going for here, but I felt like that vocal was a little too dry setting. Like, if it was just like a natural vocal, I think this track could have possibly crept into a top spot for me. But as it is, again, his vocals, the background vocals, the strong lyrics, and the intimacy of the whole song, I really did appreciate it, and I felt it was a really nice follow-up to Far. did not crack my top 3 though. Oh boy. For those of you
no, just kidding. I actually need my glasses to read my notes here, but no, with Fallen for You. Before I took off my glasses, did you mentally call it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was reading the lyrics and I'm thinking, this is gonna be the one, isn't it?
So, where do I start? I think I'll start with the lyrics because, I kind of had this, initially, I kind of had the same thing as you where I'm like, it's kind of hard to pinpoint what this song is going for. Like, I kind of took it initially as I believe it was about a love, like a person who he loved who had died, and Bartees is just singing to that person in the afterlife. But the more and more I think about it in the context of where Bartees was at the time, I honestly feel like this here is again talking about how Bartees was at during the during his darkest moments of his life, where he wanted to do music but he couldn't break out of it, and he was just living a life that he just felt like he was undeserved. He felt like he would love, but he ultimately ended up hating, and wanted to dive into music, but you get bars are you heavy, are you scared, are you holding up over there, were you good enough, it seemed like shit ain't fair, I just wandered around, are you near? And this Fallen for You, on one hand you can kind of think about this could be love and everything like that, but I think he's just falling for the fact that he's just embracing the life that he wants to live. He just wants to be himself, at the end of the day. So with that message alone, fuck me sideways. But it's not even the lyrics. It's just the it's the pure execution of the song that's so utterly beautiful, man. I'm gonna disagree with you about Bartees' vocals being overproduced. I just felt like they were so powerful with his emotions. You can literally taste the emotions that are on display in this track, and you get the little moments, little pauses that occur before Bartees goes into the next section of the song, and those are played out very purposefully. But dude, the fake out ending at the end of the second verse, I just wrote, my God, that was utterly brain shattering for me. It was very purposeful, very and now we're going into that. Oh my God, it was just I just fell in love with this song through and throughout. And going into this review, dude, I thought Mustang was gonna be the song that I was gonna do a backflip for, but dude, Fallen for You did a number on me, and I cannot deny who I am as a person. And when it comes to tracks like this and how just they're executed and they just come across, Fallen for You is easily my favorite song off the whole record.
And that's very respectable, man. I'm willing to agree to disagree on the execution part of it. Again, I would love to see perhaps Bartees himself, and he's probably done this. I would just have to find footage of it. But if not him, some artist or several artists, love to see a live cover version of this song. Just because I feel with a more natural vocal and a more stripped down acoustic feel, just au naturel, I think I would probably appreciate the song even more than in its current form on this album. But I do agree with you, man. I very much love your interpretation of this being a love song to himself, because you're probably right about that. You're probably right about how, he was scared of who he was, and he thought he was going to lose this part of him forever, and now he realizes, hey, I actually want to devote myself to you, so I can become a better version of myself. And that is a lovely, lovely sentiment. So, much kudos to you for pointing that out, and glad to see that this is your top track again. This is what I'll probably have to revisit on repeated listens again, whether it be this version or the acoustic version that I am willing to seek out. But I am willing to throw to you for the final track off of Live Forever, and that is Ghostly.
So this was a very interesting way to end off the record. The song as a whole is essentially split into two parts, and it's funny, like throughout this whole record we've come up with various comparisons of artists that sound like songs off the record, and one, Bartees would be very proud of us for that. Two, this song, like at least at the first part, reminded me of Frank Ocean. Like the first part is very freeform. You get that spoken word element with that scatter production, and like during this part you get Bartees manipulating his voice as the track progresses on, and things like get more like like almost like the production is like swallowing up his voice, and like during this part in the song you get Bartees looking back on his past essentially. Like the first part is just, it seems like he's talking about hanging out with a friend, but then life kind of hits and oh hey, that's how you lose at day one, call in 4 months, and basically life happens to Bartees at this point. Like he was friends with this one person, and then they fell out of touch. And then in the second part, things start after a brief pause, and then Bartees comes in with a more straightforward indie rock direction. And for the first time in this review here with the last track, Bartees actually delivers a good falsetto. So I did appreciate that. And the cadence that is presented at the end of the track is just on point, and I love it. Yeah, I don't really have any other notes about the track as a whole. Lyrical highlight for me though was him talking about feel ghostly bad, way beyond description. I feel sad not because I miss her. I don't want nothing I could lose. And I feel like at this point in the Bartees' journey, he's very heartbroken because he feels the sad, not because he misses her. He just feels ghostly bad, like he's just haunting. Like the concept of a ghost has been used throughout this whole record here so far, but it's just something's haunting him bad, and it's way beyond description. He just can't put his finger on it, but he doesn't want nothing he could lose. So in a way, he feels like he's not sad because he misses her, but the effect of the relationship as a whole is impacting his ability to accept something that he could lose. So that was, again, very effective lyric writing. But yeah, just overall though, with a ghostly, yeah, I'm putting it in the good song bucket as a whole. Like, I very much appreciate what was going on here. And catch me on another day. This could be a cut track. But yeah, it's a great way to end off the record.
I agree. It is a very nice way to end off the record. And again, I very much appreciate your analysis because I'm starting to piece everything together about this album, it seems, where it feels like he's talking about missing her, and you almost wonder if the overarching theme was he had to find himself and perhaps lose her in order to find himself, like he talked about on Fallen For You, because before she was this person asking if he had a day job. So it does kind of piece everything together, it seems, but that's just speculation. I don't know for sure. What I do know for sure is that I too, throughout a couple listens, had Frank Ocean comparisons to this album, and this was another example of that, especially with the free-flowing synth at the beginning before it adds the acoustic guitar about halfway through. It does have a lot of reverb on the vocal, but it does fit a lot better And I'm thinking maybe that's where you and I sort of agree on the vocal performance being a little better. Maybe because I don't know, maybe falsetto and reverb is a very touchy zone when it comes to both performance and production. But yeah, it just works here. It just works here quite a bit. And you're right. He has been talking a lot about ghosts on this album, and again, that's another overarching theme that I think he's been dealing with. Whether they be ghosts or demons. Ghosts are another form of demons, and demons are another form of ghost. So yeah, I did appreciate how it felt, and just the fact that after two very dark sounding tracks, like not dark in the Mossblerd sense, but dark in the nighttime at a barn sense, we get something that just based on the key change alone feels like it's a lot brighter, a lot sunnier. Even though it's not sunnier, it feels a lot more brighter and clearer in tone than the last two. So I did appreciate that as well. And yeah, I thought Ghostly, even though I wouldn't say I'd say it probably goes to good song bucket, but I'd have to revisit it again to make sure. But yeah, that's probably where I would put it as a good song bucket.
Okay. So we're it seems like we're kind of in agreement, but not like you might be a little bit lower on the track than myself, but that's fair enough, man. It's very very much a ghostly kind of track. It's a very much a ghostly way to end off the review, and for those of you out there who haven't noticed, we've reached the point in the review where 11 tracks have been brought to the table. We have smacked those 11 tracks down. We have filled out our scorecards. So there's only one thing left to say about this review.
We did it, man.
We went up to Bartees Strange and we quoted Freddie Mercury and said, "Who wants to live forever?" And Bartees said, "Watch this." So, anyways, I'm gonna go first in terms of my overall thoughts and feelings and ratings about the album as a whole. So for me, I was very happy that we did this review. This album is basically the encapsulation of what Bartees was trying to go for and try to dive into music as a whole. He was held back by the concept of genres. So the first couple of tracks, while they're not a traditional genre that you would find African American music, African Americans playing in as a whole, he completely owns that, and then he completely inverts your expectations on its head throughout the rest of the album. You get mixtures of free form, acoustic jams, hip hop, and just song manipulations and very excellent songwriting throughout the whole album. So I very much applaud for what he was going for there. I was completely blown away by Fallen For You. I kind of thought about going into this review, I'm like, Boomer, Mustang are going to be my top three. Probably Mustang's going to be my top track. I'm kind of curious to see what the rest of the album is going to hold, and I was pleasantly surprised. So going into the review as a whole, I kind of thought my overall rating for Live Forever by Bartees Strange was going to be a solid 8 out of 10. However, due to my dissection about the track and just the overall feelings I have about the track as a whole, I'm going to bump up that rating to a solid 9 out of 10. This album fucking rules, dude.
All right. My thoughts on Live Forever. Again, I came into this whole thing very open canvas, no knowledge. Let me see what you got. And what I ended up getting was a very confessional, very wild, very, pardon the term, strange set of genre blending and mixed vibes throughout the entire thing. Whether you get the straightforward highlights like Stone Meadows or Boomer, to much more confessional songs like Fallen For You, or even something as crazy as Mossblerd. it is very clear that Bartees knows his stuff and is willing to wear his influences on his sleeve. And lyrically, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's coming to terms with who he is, not just as an artist, but a person. There were times where I struggled a little bit to get into the album real proper. Like, there really wasn't any one track on here where I was like, oh, hell yeah, turn this up right now. But at the same time, aside from that few seconds of Kelly Rowland, the paid subscription version, there really wasn't any bad on this album by any means, and there was a lot left for me to consider for the future. So I'm grading this on a little bit of a curve, and mostly because, with further lyrical dissection, I grew to appreciate this album a little bit more. So yeah, I am going to give Live Forever by Bartees Strange a 7.5 out of 10.
All right. So you're 7.5, and my 9 equal out to be a solid 8.25, or you believe in yourself. In the words of Bad Bunny, you are stronger than you think, man. So it averages out to be an 8.25 out of 10, because math works for everybody. So, in terms of the next album recommendations for me, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to be very straightforward. Just go to his next album, Farm to Table. It's a solid record. I listened to it, the other day, in preparation for this review. Pretty good listen, and very much carries the themes of, the sonic motifs of what he was going for with Live Forever. So, yeah, if you enjoyed Live Forever, just, go to the next record. Don't overthink it, man.
Me, on the other hand, I have yet to do that, go to the next record, so I will have to be on the outlook for that. But for now, the album I'm going to recommend is one we've talked about before here on Hey Listen to This. We talked about it a while ago, and I struggled to pick which side, because again, he blended genres so much, I was like, what does this remind me of? I was thinking maybe a one-man band performance like Todd Rundgren's Herman Make Hollow, or maybe something like Blonde by Frank Ocean. But I'm going to go the indie route, because I'm going to go with an album that, much like Live Forever, has elements of hard rock, gospel, intimacy, uneasiness, frustration, and just heart-on-sleeve emotion. And that is Angel in Real Time by Gang of Youths. Very much an album that reminded me a lot of this one, where you have a lot of synth-heavy stuff, a lot of guitar-heavy stuff, a lot of a cappella, intimate, confessional stuff. And even though there were a couple tracks on there where I was like, I can overall recommend that album as a whole compared to this one. So yeah, Angel in Real Time by Gang of Youths, my next recommended album.
Excellent album, and I think I'm due for a re-listen of that album coming up here shortly. So, dear listener, to summarize, our average rating for Live Forever by Bartees Strange was indeed an 8.25 out of 10. I recommended Bartees' next album, Farm to Table, and Matthew recommends Angel in Real Time by Gang of Youths. So, yeah, dear listener, if you've yet to listen to, Live Forever by Bartees Strange, well, what are you waiting for? Go check it out. We both gave it a positive score, and after that, follow your choices accordingly. So, yeah, man, that was a very, very, very fun review. Thank you for coming on this journey with me, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for taking me on this journey. It was a wild one. I again, I'd never heard of Bartees Strange before this, but now that I've given this album a full listen, I'm going to put an ear and try to listen to more stuff by him, because I appreciate what I hear.
And that means the world to me. Thank you, man. And speaking about, meaning the world to me and taking journeys, there is one more thing left to do in this review here before we officially just melt it into bed.
Jeez.
you're not the only one who can come up with like crazy like sayings and anything like that. So
I appreciate
for
that.
lack of a better, for lack of a better segue, Matthew, where are we going next? What's the next stop in our musical journey here?
So, talking about journeys and the choices we choose, I noticed something after last week's Stevie Wonder episode. This is the second year that we've done our Black History Month series, and so far I have chosen 3 albums out of the weeks that I have had to choose, and I noticed a trend that all of the albums I have chosen have not only been from the 1970s, but the early 1970s. So, Jack Johnson by Miles Davis was 1970. There's a Riot Going On by Sly and the Family Stone, 1971. Intervisions by Stevie Wonder, 1973. So, for this next review, I'm going to buck that trend, and I am not going to go to the 1970s. Instead, I have 4 albums that I'm going to have you choose from. And I'm going to... Each choice of these first choices is going to lead to 2 more choices. So a little bit of a choose your own adventure. So I'm going to have you start by picking between 2 decades. The 1960s or the 1980s?
1980s.
1980s. All right. Okay. So your 2 choices for the 1980s are based on the following words: crossover or controversy.
Oh, I'm just going to be true to myself and just go with the first option that just popped out to me, and I'm going to do controversy.
Oh, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a test. This is going to be quite the adventure we're going on indeed. So, for our next review, we are diving into the world of 1980s hip-hop. And we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial records in the history of music. We're going to be heading to 1989. And we're going to be talking about the album by the group known as NWA, entitled Straight Outta Compton.
Let's fucking go! I'm so excited! Oh my god. Okay. Oh man. Oh, okay. Oh man, I am just I'm so gay, man. Oh, I think I've listened to that record like a handful of times, but I'm salivating at the opportunity, man.
I'm salivating a little bit too, although I'm also sweating a little bit because there are a lot of words on that record we are not allowed to say.
Yeah, but I feel like we can really dive into what that record has to bring to the table. So, dear listener out there, if you've never listened to Straight Outta Compton by NWA, or if it's been a while since you listened to it, make sure you check out the record before next week's review. That way you can have opinions about the record that we're going to be talking about, and then you can have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt will be bringing to the table on next week's review. So, yeah, regarding the outro here, it's kind of hard to tell exactly where I want to go. Oh, I know it don't show.